Hi guys, I'm Jonathan. This is Harvey
Yo,
and our friend Daniel, who you can't see but you will see very soon.
Anonymous Dan.
Hello.
Yeah, guys, how's everyone doing?
Good,
Good.
good. First episode. It's rocking well.
Yeah. Are the nerves kicking in? Are the nerves kicking in, or are you not feeling confident?
Not yet, not quite. Not yet. We'll see.
I'm treating this like a Champions League final.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Isn't it? Your experience, you had a previous YouTube channel.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do. If you guys want to go and check that out, don't worry, I'll be dropping the information soon. Hi guys, what are we reacting to today? What we were reviewing today. Sorry about that.
Today we're talking about Godzilla Minus One, which, just to give a brief summary, it's set in post-war Japan in 1945 and follows Shikishima, a kamikaze pilot who kind of cheated his way through World War II by constantly pretending that he had technical issues, and so he always kept putting off his missions until he got through the war. He then returns to his hometown, where he tries to rebuild his life and just tries to move on. And over the next couple of years, we follow him through those efforts, and then Godzilla shows up and begins terrorizing the Japanese coast, and it then goes from there. That's the basic setup.
Cool. So, Jonathan, give us your thoughts.
The best kaiju movie of 2023. I don't even know, before you even say something, I don't even know if there was any monster films that dropped this year. Whoa.
My knowledge.
That were big, but maybe there was some, but I don't think they were like big box office production type of films that were dropped. But yeah, if there was, then this is definitely the best that's come out this year.
100%.
Oh, so no.
I agree. Yeah. No, that was actually a lot more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. To be fair, it was like a really well put together story, and it had a lot more heart and a lot more emotion than I thought it would actually as well. To be fair, so definitely one of the sort of better movies I've seen this year. Dan?
It's probably the best movie I've seen this year.
Oh, the best
new movie. I've seen some good older movies, but in terms of new movies, it's probably the best one. I think the first half is this year. Yes,
this year.
I think the first half is borderline flawless, and I think the second half makes no sense.
No sense.
That's right.
Really?
Which I think is the most negative take I've seen on the internet. Everybody else seems to love this without reservations. But yeah, I had some huge problems with the plot and theme in the second half, to the point where it looks to me like it's two different movies, right? Like where they had a movie which was everything up until Godzilla shows up, and then they also had to film everything that comes after and the way they defeat them, and those feel like two completely different movies to me.
Interesting.
I hear what you're saying, but you don't feel like that worked, because one thing Sorry, carry on.
I mean, we can go into detail in that later, but yeah, I think I really liked in the first of all, the characters are amazing. Like just following Shikishima and his survivor's guilt and his post-war trauma and how he slowly puts himself together and manages to move on, only for everything to be destroyed in with one tail swipe, is really amazing. I think it's the only time this year where a movie has gotten an emotional response out of me.
That literally is what I was gonna say. I feel like, I think this was a Japanese film.
Well, yes, this is completely
Japanese film. I felt with this movie, I felt like they just knew how to connect with the audience. They knew how to drive emotion. I feel like that's with a lot of Japanese films. I was gonna say Asian films in general, I feel like they're good when it comes to kind of like connecting with the audience and having you feel for the character. And yeah, they do. When it comes to the emotion, especially the little girl's performance, she was amazing.
Yeah, she was really good.
I don't know what type of acting classes they have out there, but yo, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it's good.
That was actually the one part where I couldn't suspend my disbelief, because the movie tried to get me to believe that a 3-year-old likes radishes, and I just cannot believe that. Like, everything about the movie totally believable. That part just a bridge too far.
So which part?
So there's a scene where they're cooking dinner, and what's her name? Noriko says something like, "I made your favorite radish soup," and that's where the movie lost me. Because no 3-year-old likes radishes.
What? Why?
Why did you lose you there?
I don't believe that a 3-year-old likes radishes. I'm sorry. Fat radishes, they're
No,
terrible.
but if you think about the setting of it, it's like a post-World War II setting where, the city's been bombed. It's a 3-year-old that's grown up in this sort of kind of post-World World War world, and probably doesn't have access to, all of the sort of variety of foods that they would have had in that time, to be honest. So could be believable in terms of like, the food having to be rationed and, them only being able to eat certain things. So that being her favorite of the few things she could eat, to be fair.
I mean, I'm about 85% joking with that.
Oh,
But
okay.
that kind of just
Okay, cool.
but everything else I really believe. I believe that even though like the effects, like the Godzilla effects, are deliberately made to look like a guy in a suit, right? Because classically that's what kaijus are, right? That's how they were filmed in the early decades. It doesn't look real, really, but it still made me believe it.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the effects. Was that done intentionally, do you feel?
Well, it's clearly, like, I don't know a lot of kaiju movies, but if you just look at clips from the older Godzilla movies, it's a guy in a suit, because that's all they had budget for, right? This is pre-CGI and so on. And there were, I think they were clearly evoking that aesthetic, which also kind of means that it does kind of look a little bit fake.
Yeah.
Even though it is CGI this time, but it's like made to look like with the classic look. So I didn't really believe that Godzilla was there, but it had enough charm and the acting was good enough that I was willing to forget it. Like, it's not so much that it convinced me; it's more it made me not care that it looked fake in that sense. And maybe this is just the movies I've been watching this year, but I felt like the character reactions were much more believable than they were in most other movies, where a lot of movies that are clearly shot in front of a green screen, characters kind of look with vague concern into the distance, but they're not really afraid. And here people were afraid when Godzilla showed. And that seems like a really basic and simple thing, but so many action movies don't do it, where people don't react the way they should.
Yeah, but that's a reflection. Obviously, that's a reflection of how good the actor is, to be honest. I think that's
absolutely. But it's also like the supporting characters. Like, it's more that the movie remembered that this should happen and they put enough effort into that detail. So it's things like that made me forget that it looked a little bit. It doesn't look cheap, but it kind of it made me not care about how it looked and just made me invest in the story. And most action movies don't do that these days.
Yeah. And I feel like, kind of what you're saying there is like the movie was made with love and care in all aspects of the movie, and you can see that.
And $15 million budget.
Yeah, small budget, which is why I partly had an issue with some of the effects of Godzilla, but at the same time I kind of understood the budget they were working with.
Yeah. And
to be fair to them, at times it did look menacing, but then there's other times where he looked completely cartoonish.
I was gonna say, guys, I actually kind of liked the way Godzilla looked in this one, because there were times, especially the moment where I don't know what that power is, but when he shoots out a blue beam.
Yeah.
There was one moment where the room went silent, right, and then you literally the camera just faced in front of him. I felt the fear factor there. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know why, I just liked the look of it. So
he looked like he was just grinning the whole time. He looked like Barney. The dinosaur Barney.
Yeah.
He just looked like Barney from like certain angles, and I just couldn't.
But
I couldn't take it seriously. I tried to look past it as much as I could, but it just didn't look serious enough for most of the movie.
But I felt like that kind of adds more to the fear, because one minute you see a guy who, to me, that looked like an evil smile, right? But then the camera will cut to obviously the reaction from the people who are in fear, and then it'll cut to the guy with the evil smile, and then obviously there was a moment of silence. Do you remember the scene where literally the room went silent, where obviously the audio cut out? I think that was when it was that scene there.
Sorry, just spoiler warning for anyone that's kind of listening at this moment.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah, I think we've given our impressions. I think we can move into full spoilers.
Yeah. Guys, spoiler time. But yeah, that scene there, I don't know. I just felt that fear, and I thought that's what I haven't felt that fear when it comes to watching a lot of the monster movies. I don't know if this one. Sorry?
Are you talking about the scene at the end when they're on the boat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that scene there where everything went silent, and obviously you saw the build up in him. Obviously you saw the build up when he was about to launch his Kamehameha. It was, bro. I'm telling you, I just felt it. I haven't felt like that sort of fear, that unsettling feeling from a monster movie in a very long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked the way that I get it. Obviously CGI for you guys look cheap, but I don't know. I just kind of appreciate it because even like the CGI, let's say the animation, Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z, obviously there's Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super. I actually like Dragon Ball animation more than Dragon Ball Super's animation, even though the animation in Dragon Ball looks, I don't know, it looks cheap. I don't know. I just like it. I appreciate it more. I don't know.
Yeah.
For me personally,
I think it's a little bit more the nostalgia of it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Or it could just be just personal taste, to be honest.
Yeah, true.
I mean, the movie is clearly made assuming that the audience has grown up with Godzilla movies, right? I've seen in other places where if you really know your Godzilla canon, there's all sorts of references and callbacks, which completely went over my head, not having seen any of them. But yeah, I think more than looking cheap, it's more that you can see its budget, but they also were extremely good at putting the money where it needs to go. They like the things that have to look good. But then like that scene where he's circling the Godzilla in his plane, and it's just Godzilla standing. It looks like a guy in a suit standing on top, like on a set that is made to look like farmland. And that doesn't, like a Western movie wouldn't shoot it quite that way, right? But here they just said, no, this is how it looks, and that's fine. And at this point, we're an hour and a half in, and we care about this character, and that's all that matters.
Definitely great. Yeah, man, this movie is definitely the one. I feel like it's definitely the one to beat this year. I might agree with Daniel when he said it's probably one of the best films of this year, because 2023. Okay, should we get into it? What would, highlights of 2023 regarding these movies? What would you say comes close to Godzilla?
In terms of cinema experience, I still think my top experience this year in the cinema was Guardians of the Galaxy. Which
no,
favorite movie, whatever. But I don't think I've had a cinema experience and we're getting off topic on this one, but I don't think I've had a cinema experience like Guardians of the Galaxy this whole year. That movie was fantastic, flawless.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
Daniel,
so my thing is I hadn't been to the cinema in about 2 years until this autumn, because I just kept looking at what's new and what's out and shrugging and then going back to sleep and then checking again 3 months later. And I broke that streak this year, and I saw 3 movies in the cinema, and this is the only one that didn't annoy me. So that's the bar.
Does that have anything to do with the duration?
Actually, this is a little over 2 hours. So I have a thing about, I think movies made today are too long, but this one doesn't have that because there's not one subplot in this. It's just one story. And it starts with the first frame, it ends with the last frame. There's no real side character. Like there's no side plots where a side character has their own adventure. It doesn't feel overstuffed. It doesn't feel like it's made by committee like a lot of big movies. It's just one story about one guy.
Yeah.
And he has a complete arc, and there's no waste here. Like you could maybe a scene here or there, but it's not a bloated movie, and that's my main complaint, that the trend towards longer movies has also led to bloated movies. And this is a bit longer than I generally like movies to be. I think anything over 90 minutes has to be justified, but this justifies it because it is just such a densely packed story with no fat and no no like attachments.
Yeah. So just kind of moving on that, like, how did you find kind of the way that they took the main character on a journey through the movie?
Like his emotional journey is incredible. Like
Pardon?
His emotional journey is incredible.
Mhm.
Like his depiction of what effectively is PTSD, his regrets, his building hope that is then immediately shattered when Godzilla shows up. It's all riveting. Like Godzilla shows up on the island in the very beginning, but then he doesn't show up for almost an hour, or maybe or only very briefly. And in a lot of movies, that those bits kind of bore me because it feels like we have to have to follow these characters, but we're not here for them. We're here for the monster, and here we were here for the characters.
And I kind of love how, kind of how his story came full circle, because obviously, and we can touch on sort of the kamikaze pilots sort of in World War II and sort of what that must have been like for them. But just his journey of sort of constantly almost like cheating death in terms of sort of one being.
I enjoy that theme. Yeah.
Perceived to be a coward because of obviously the culture and the traditions in sort of Japan at that time in terms of sort of running away from his duty as a sort of kamikaze pilot. And forgive me, I'm not going to remember. My memory's so terrible sometimes. But there were a few instances in the movie where he kind of cheated death. I think another example was when we thought Nakiro died, but then she like pushed him in the alley, and then she took like kind of the full force. Well, she didn't take the full force of the blast, but she was like kind of caught up in sort of some of the wreckage from sort of Godzilla trampling across sort of Tokyo. But there was like,
by the way, but sorry, carry on.
Yeah, but there were like a few instances of him kind of like cheating death, and obviously then sort of the emotional sort of weight of sort of having being perceived as a coward and kind of running away from his duty, and sort of the impact that sort of that was then perceived to have on sort of everyone else in terms of sort of when I can't remember the character's name when he came back from the war, and she was shocked to see him. And then she was saying, like, all of these people died because you didn't sort of take up your duty. Yeah. But essentially, I just kind of like love that through line where by the end of it, he kind of, almost like had a purpose to live for. He had a greater purpose. This is what you sort of you needed to do by the end of the movie, basically. And that one moment he had with sort of the mechanic that was fixing his pilot, where he was like to him, live, like, choose life. And again, that kind of feeds into a separate conversation about like kamikaze pilots and whether there could have been a different way that they could have sort of fought that war. Because again, I think there was like a mention of, kamikaze pilots, the ones that were a little bit questioning the methods or sort of had some reservations or like some fear about sort of following through with some of the kamikaze act was sort of the ones with the families and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole thing about cheating death is interesting because he didn't strike me as a coward, right? He wasn't too scared to do his mission. It's just he didn't
because
want.
Whenever he was faced with the past, that's when you see the broken man in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I do agree with what you're saying, Daniel. Like, he wasn't a coward at all. It's just that whenever he was faced with his past, and obviously his past was obviously the woman that one that was looking after his kid, and it was the pilot, the guy that was fixing the plane. Obviously, that's when obviously you'll see his vulnerable, broken side. But majority of the time,
yeah,
majority of the time,
I wouldn't say that his character was him being a coward. It was more how he was perceived by people, and like him being ashamed of being a kamikaze pilot that survived the war because he didn't, he chose not to follow through on the act.
But he doesn't otherwise run away from responsibility or danger, right? It's just that he was conscripted into this role, and he would have thrown away his life for no reason. It wouldn't have made a difference. And obviously, that rhymes with the end, where him taking that risk for himself will make a difference because he's the only one who can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not more so like me perceiving him as a coward. It's more the culture of the Japanese people at the time, and by the comment that his neighbor made when he came back, and again the whole blaming him for people dying because he didn't he didn't follow through.
Yeah, definitely.
Died as well though.
Sorry?
He would have died as well though if he did shoot up.
Yeah, exactly. And then that just feeds into him. I think you mentioned it about like him having his own path that he needed to discover, and having that greater purpose to then actually have that bravery to to save the day at the end.
And also, he didn't actually duck responsibility. Like a lot of the times, he was going out there to try and right his wrongs. There's only three times where he was ducking responsibility. It was when he was facing Godzilla, which is very realistic. Like you see something like Godzilla, most men, which I enjoyed it, which is like there's some realism in that as well. Because most men, you see Godzilla, your legs you're shattering. It's collapse. You go and say it. So
you're frozen in place, man.
Exactly. So yeah, I like the fact how he literally didn't duck responsibility. I just like the progression of his character, like literally the progression of just watching him from a broken man to a literal kamikaze symbolism, and then to actually receiving that forgiveness from the guy who was fixing the plane and just ending up being a superhero I really liked his character. I definitely liked his story. I liked how they literally what they did with him, and it's good, man. It was nice. It was good.
But at the same time, he's not like a stoic tough guy, right? He is traumatized, and he has this mental breakdown at one point. And when Godzilla shows up again, he really panics. He really has like a fight or flight response. But then it's very much the embodiment of courage is not the absence of fear; it's getting over your fear. And he's very much that.
And there was one scene as well when Godzilla destroyed Tokyo, and then his reaction to Godzilla.
Ginza. Tokyo wasn't destroyed; it was Ginza, the town of Ginza.
Oh, sorry, Ginza.
Yeah.
Ginza, when Ginza was destroyed, and he literally looked up at Godzilla, and he was just screaming. And in that scene, I don't know why, but it's like the way that even the camera, like when the way that the camera was faced at Godzilla, I don't know why, but it was like obviously Godzilla can't help himself. He's just like an animal. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It was the way that he screamed at him. It was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but it was like he knew that Godzilla couldn't help himself, but at the same time, he wanted to kill Godzilla. He was pissed, but he knew that he couldn't do nothing about it. So it was. I don't know how to kind of describe what I'm trying to say, but that scene for me was probably one of the most that was like a highlight moment, because that to me I was like, okay, this guy, he's reached breaking point, but he's reached a breaking point where he's done being a broken man, and now he's just in that mode where he's out to kill an animal. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't know what it's doing, but needs to be stopped. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too much into that, but
yeah. I mean, Godzilla is clearly the manifestation of all his fears, right? It's like the continuation of every fear he felt during the war, and his struggles with moving on after that. Like Godzilla is just the physical representation of everything that has been plaguing him and has been haunting him, right?
Good point. Who would you guys say was, I wouldn't say favorite character, but who would you say was gave you your favorite performance in the film?
I really liked the scientist man.
I was about to say
Dr. Noda. For like, he's really cliche down to the hairstyle, but he's just charming. And he like one of my pet peeves in movies is like when like professions are stereotyped, where every scientist is like the socially awkward genius who has zero common sense, like things, you know what I mean, like these kinds of archetypes. And this guy got within an inch of that archetype, but he was still a real person. And when he wasn't giving a presentation, as in his like a professional presentation, he was just a guy, right? He wasn't like a cartoon character, or he wasn't like a two-dimensional cutout, but you could clearly see the archetype that he represented. And I'm sure if you watch older Godzilla movies, each one of them probably has one like these.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly there.
I was going to mention him as well. He was amazing. I just loved like the whole comedic tone. Not even just him. I think there was like a comedic tone to the film that kind of said to me, okay, this is like Japanese culture in films, which I really enjoy. Like I don't know how, like, even when they perform, like they're very animated and exaggerated, especially with their eyes. Like they use their eyes a lot in different moments of fear, moments of comedy, just moments of disrespect. I just love how, I don't know, I just love that comedic tone that they had to film. And I'm generally not that type of guy. Like there were many times where you, Harvey, Daniel, you'd be suggesting a lot of like comedy films or films that have like a lot of like just that comedic tone into it. And I don't really like it when it's mixed with action films or thriller films. Like exceptions is Marvel for me. But most of the time I'm not really a big fan of comedy. But when it comes to this film, like it it was right. You know what I'm saying? They added that, that sprinkle of comedy in it, and I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. It was very effective.
I think I can agree with that as well. Like well, that was one thing I was going to highlight. It's just like the undertones of comedy that was in the movie. And as someone that's not as versed in Japanese or Asian movies and stuff like that, and watching a lot of Hollywood movies where a lot of the comedy is now being done the same way. You got the marvelous humor being applied to almost every movie that's coming out, which is kind of draining now. So this was very refreshing to see, just it done in a little bit more clever and subtle way.
Exactly.
Right moment, and not just put in there for the sake of being put in there.
There's zero Joss Whedon in this.
Yeah.
Which is, like you say, very refreshing.
So, question. This is definitely a big spoiler. But at the end, when he found out that call her his missus. When he found out that his missus was alive.
That was bullshit. Can I say that?
Yeah. Before we get to that, when he found out she was alive, what was growing on the side of her neck? Because the person I went cinema with, she was saying how, maybe that's like Godzilla's DNA some way went inside her, and now I don't know if she's gonna end up giving birth to some next Godzilla. I don't know. But what exactly do you guys think that was?
So I it was a representation. So like Godzilla is meant to be kind of a representation of the Hiroshima bomb that was dropped on Tokyo. Yeah. So I thought that was just like a representation of
on Hiroshima.
Sorry?
On Hiroshima, not on Tokyo.
Hiroshima, yeah. So I just thought that was like a what's it called? I literally just lost the word. I thought it was like a kind of representation of the radiation poisoning and some of the after sickness that was felt by the people that survived the initial bombing. I thought it was a representation of that.
Okay.
That's how I perceived it. But again, it'd be good to hear.
Yeah, I didn't think of the radiation point. I didn't think of that. Because there's definitely I think there's a second film in the works. So
okay.
I mean, they did kind of hint at a sequel when they showed the fragments of Godzilla kind of sinking and then splitting.
Yeah.
Like his regeneration had started up. Although I'm not sure that it's a sequel bait, more that it's reinforces this theme of the war is never over.
Yeah.
Right, there's always consequences, there's always lingering effects. In her case, it's this infection, and also Godzilla just cannot be killed. He will always be back, just like there will always be another war.
No, but I went on Google and I checked. I think I saw an article where it said there was another one in the works. I'm not too sure.
Okay.
About false information, but
I haven't checked that.
How much money did this movie make? Or how much money has it made so far?
All of it. $15 million budget, currently $65 million box office.
Wow.
Yeah, so they'll definitely be a sequel, especially with the audience reaction and the critic reaction to it as well being so positive. I think there'll definitely be a second one.
Yeah, I don't know how the Japanese movie industry works. I don't know if they think in those terms. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was one, but I haven't seen anything announced. But yeah, I don't about that infection. I didn't quite get, like, on a literal plot level, how that got there. Other than it's a side effect of being close to Godzilla.
Yeah, I couldn't quite. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think I don't remember exactly how I think she just fell out of the train car, right? And then it was assumed that she would die from the fall. And then obviously she survives and is recovered. I'm not sure how, like, it's not like Godzilla bit her or anything like that. So I'm not sure on a literal level how that got there. And there may not be an answer to that. It just simply, as there's always side effects, there's always consequences.
Do you not remember the scene when Godzilla's kind of tearing through the city still, and she's on the street, and that moment where she saves, I can't remember the main character's name, where she saves him, and then he lets out that like beam.
Yeah.
I think
But that's just a shockwave, right? Like he uses his atomic breath, it creates an explosion, like it destroys a building or something, and then the shockwave is what gets her.
Yeah, and I'm just unsure whether the sort of whatever he breathes, like the sort of the beam that he breathes had the radiation effect, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's possible, but then that means everybody who was there has that too, right?
Which would be kind of accurate to real life.
Yeah, but what could be the effect of it? Like, is it instant death, or is it something extraterrestrial? Or,
I think Irve is right. It's clearly an analog to radiation poisoning. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Godzilla is not really known to infect people.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, I think it's just damage from being around Godzilla and being around the atomic breath.
But actually thinking of it, because it was definitely highlighted. Like, they definitely wanted you to kind
of
see it. So I don't know whether they plan, something clever for the second movie.
I feel like the significance of it must be like, I feel like it'll be definitely one of the main plots in the second film, if there is a second film.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's thematic more than literal, because the entire movie they're constantly going on about how the war is not over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if Godzilla is the continuation or the embodiment of that experience, then even when you defeat Godzilla, you haven't defeated Godzilla.
Yeah.
How the hell do you think you should you defeat Godzilla? Because bro, the guy just keeps saying, huh?
I see, you clearly can't. They blew him to pieces, and he's just
that's what I'm saying. He's moving like Cell. It's like, Jesus Christ, like, how are you gonna kill this guy? Like, not even this guy. How are you gonna kill this thing? It's crazy. But I had a great time, man.
I had a great. I will say, sorry, Nakira coming back to life, absolute bullshit. Like that. This is what I hate about like certain movies, is when they're like scared to follow through on killing a character, especially in this situation where she should clearly be dead. 100%.
Not necessarily, because what makes
flying
was a storm, and a lot of people do. Sorry,
go on.
So what technically hit her was like a storm. Do you know what I'm saying? And there are people that survive stuff like that. So even that death, even when I saw that, I said to myself, okay, cool. In like most movies, stuff like that is, you know what I'm saying, generally they don't die, because like I do agree with what you're saying. They don't kind of go through with it for whatever reason. But that one, I don't know. I didn't think she was dead just because, I don't know. I didn't think she was dead because that storm wave, whatever that hit her, it wasn't strong enough. I said to myself, okay, she could still potentially be alive. It wasn't like Godzilla hit her with a beam right in front of her face.
Yeah.
I think it's plausible that she could have survived, and I don't have a logic problem with it. But I think thematically it would have been stronger if it had been just him and Akiko going forward.
Yeah, especially because he had that sort of situation where he found it so difficult. Again, he was like battling his inner demons, and he was sort of suffering with his past so much that he couldn't allow himself to, move forward with a relationship with her, even though it was like so clear, it was so obvious that they should have been together, throughout the movie. So it would have had a greater impact. I understand why they did it, because everyone loves a happy ending. To me, it's just they should have followed through.
I think the worst part about it is her line, which is he just walks into her room, her hospital room. She's seen him for the first time since the attack, and the only thing she says is your war over now? What context does she have? What character reason does she have for saying this?
None.
Like it's just because we're already over 2 hours and we have to wrap up the movie. like it was really the worst line of the movie for me on that level. That every other time characters act in character and have reasons for saying what they say, even if I think some lines were a bit clunky, especially when it came to the social allegory. but I'm sure we will get into that as well. Yeah, that is just a line that only works on the director is now talking to you, the audience, right? It doesn't work on a character level whatsoever because she has no context for this. She should be happy and surprised to see him alive. That should be her reaction. She should not ask him if his war is over now. It's way too literal.
I mean, while you're saying that, I'm kind of misleaning a little bit to the other side as to why. Because once she knew that Godzilla was like a big demon for him. Like, you know, it was like one of the reasons why he had so much kind of like trauma built up inside him. And then two, once Godzilla's been, you know, defeated, it would have been sort of massive news. So she would have known that. So her then sort of seeing him and, you know, being, you know, one, being grateful to still be alive, and two, then seeing the, you know, the possibility of them kind of moving forward together. I think the line works better. I think the line works for me personally, anyways.
But she hasn't gotten the update yet. Like he hasn't. At that point, he hasn't had time to tell her what he did. She doesn't know Godzilla is dead.
No, but in terms of like Godzilla being defeated, like by the time that he's hopped off the plane, hopped off the boat, and sort of got into the hospital and seen her, I'm sure news has spread that, you know, this monster's been defeated across the town. I feel like news. I like, again, in terms of like believability, I would slightly believe that news would have got around, and then she would have sort of known that even despite knowing whether it was him or not, that sort of had the heroic act at the end. I feel like she would probably know, which makes the line a little bit more acceptable for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So these kaiju movies kind of fall into two categories. Some of them are very human focused, and they're all about humans trying to survive a disaster. Right, the 2014 Godzilla, if you've seen that, is similar. And then there's the monster-focused ones where the humans are kind of there, but the story is really about the monsters, and we're watching the monsters fight. Mm-hmm. And this one was very clearly in the first category, and in part because of the budget, we spent almost all of the time just in rooms with 2 or 3 characters, and they're talking about their reaction to the monster and other things going on. And often those kinds of scenes bore me because I'm there for the monster fight. But here, I think this movie was really effective at not having that problem, in my opinion. So I wanted to ask, where on that spectrum do you fall, and how does this movie fit in with that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with you, obviously, in terms of, you know, this one being a little bit more human focused. I think what carried it was just a strong story throughout, having good themes and having a good story throughout, where even when you was in the rooms with just sort of a few characters, and they were just conversating, because it was sort of kind of compelling, and because you were, you know, because it made you care about the characters enough, it worked for me. I don't know how you feel about it, Jonathan.
Yeah, for me personally, I am easily pleased when it comes to films. So, but it has to be a mixture of both, honestly. Because I feel like if there's not enough entertainment, which usually comes from obviously the monster ravaging through the sea, and it's just all human based, just focusing on how the humans survive, then I'll be honest with you, I won't be like overall satisfied with my experience. So, but at the same time, if it's just a monster ravaging through the sea, and you know, beautiful effects, beautiful aesthetics. Like, for example, Marvel, right? Like Marvel, they're known for beautiful aesthetics, but when it comes to the actual story itself, it's
like
something. You know what I'm saying? So honestly, for me, it has to be a mixture. There has to be a balance.
Yeah. So how did you feel about? I know we haven't sort of know first episode and all that. How did you feel about Oppenheimer, which was, you know?
I haven't finished it.
You what?
I haven't actually finished it.
You've never finished it? Wow. Is it just not enough action, not enough happening in there for you?
No, it's not that. It's I just need a right time to watch it. Like, for example, right, Daniel hasn't watched House of Dragons yet. He's got the whole box set at home, right?
Yeah.
But he needs the right time. Like, he needs to be in the mood to watch it. So when I was watching it, I wasn't in the mood. So I was trying to force myself. And there's definitely times where I'm in the mood to watch a biography or whatever. I'm definitely in the mood to watch it. Like, when I went to go watch Napoleon, I was in the mood, and that was like a 3-hour and 28-minute film. That was long. I'll be honest with you, that was long. But I was in the mood to watch that, and I enjoyed it. So with Oppenheimer, I just wasn't in the mood to fully watch it, but I'm definitely going to finish it. You know, a lot of people, especially my guy, was talking about how it was probably the best film that he's seen this year. So I'm like, damn. Okay.
Similar conversation. I watched it twice. It was
Damn.
like, and loved it even more the second time. It was so great.
6 hours. You know, damn.
Jeez. Yeah. Speaking of, I need to watch Killers of the Flower Moon still.
I watched that. That was pretty enjoyable. Well, not enjoyable. Obviously, the subject matter wasn't enjoyable, but obviously the film was. It was definitely well made. It was good. It was a good film. But yeah, Daniel, sorry.
Sorry, you got sidetracked.
Yeah. Going back to your point about obviously concentrating like human survival and obviously or just the monster entertainment. What were you going from it? Like, what was your main point?
No, it's more that these movies tend to fall into these two categories, and whether or not you enjoy that movie depends a lot on which of the two you wanted and which of the two it is. Like a lot of of the current legendary continuity. I liked Godzilla in 2014, most of all of them, because it's got actual characters and actual plot in it, and the others are just waiting for the CGI fest to start. And on that level, I like this one as well. Like, I would not have enjoyed just Godzilla just rampaging for 2 hours. That would have gotten very boring very quickly. And I think it really helped here that the human story and the Godzilla story were the same story, right? That they were not like, those were not two plot threads that kind of run in parallel or that kind of where one leads into the other. It's the same story, right? And it's and the conclusion of one is also the conclusion to the other. And I think that is why it works so well, and that is why you don't mind watching a Godzilla movie where it's two people sitting in a room talking about their feelings for half an hour, because that is the plot, right? That is not just filler. That is not just waiting for the monster to show up. That is the plot, and I think that is why this movie works.
Interesting. I feel like coming out of this, so I'm not, again, well versed in like kaiju movies or Asian movies or anything like that, but from this experience, any recommendations from you guys, from anyone in the comments, let me know. I need to up my knowledge.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Godzilla 2014, which is the first one in the Western series of movies, that is really good, and like that is kind of similar in that it's about the impact of the monsters on people and on their lives, and it's not just them running away from the CGI budget. It's like they have actual character arcs that are informed by the monsters. So if you like this one, you'll probably like that one as well.
Yeah, I'll give it a watch. For sure.
In the beginning, I said that I thought the second half was nonsense, and it seems like I'm alone with that opinion. So I figured we could talk about that. If you're up for it.
Why do you think the second half was nonsense?
So just to preface this, I think the first half is borderline perfect. Like the depiction of it has very strong themes of this whole the war never ends and moving on and survivor's guilt and all of these things. So the in the second half of the movie, it kind of turns from survivor's guilt and like the lingering effects of war and trying to move on to the Japanese government is useless and it's up to the Japanese people to find a better way, right? And that is where this whole operation, I forget what it's called, but they like the scientists and the industrialists and the ex-soldiers all come together and they formulate this plan with the freon gas and the flotation devices and all of that. And the message here is very clearly, it's more like a broad spectrum criticism of the Japanese government, right? That they're ineffective, that they don't have the interests of the people at heart, and so on. Did you think that worked in the movie, and was it effective and did it make sense?
I would say, in terms of like the critique on the Japanese government, I feel where it's kind of like carried through is, again, just linked back to the kamikaze pilots and that particular tactic during the war, and how, like you said, they didn't really care about their people, and how sort of, they were seen as dispensable. It was just sort of, here's a target that you need to destroy. If you lose your life in it, you're doing it for the greater good of the country, and not really sort of kind of caring about the individual. And I felt that they, kind of almost like, again, completed that arc where in the very sort of like last moments where he's like kind of going to sort of be the hero, and again the mechanics worked on the sort of on the plane, and he says live, like that's his like message to the guy, like your message is to live. And I feel like that shows that there was maybe a different way, maybe another way where they could have like maybe fought the war. Maybe the whole sort of tactics of having kamikaze pilots is being critiqued in that particular moment, where there was sort of different strategies, different tactics that the government could have employed to sort of better safekeep the people and the sort of the soldiers that were fighting for them. So I felt that that was something that kind of carried on when it was came full circle in the movie, and I'd be very curious to see how Japanese people would react to the movie in terms of like how it would make them feel about sort of the government, and whether sort of they had sort of similar critiques, not only to sort of how sort of the government treats its people, not only to sort of the whole idea of the kamikaze pilot as well. But yeah, no, it'd just be interesting to see how like sort of the Japanese people view the movie in terms of like whether they had any specific critiques to sort of the government, how it treats people, to some of the kamikaze pilots of that particular era as well, and how they look back on that particular era, and sort of kind of what they learned from it, and how they kind of sort of grow and change from there as well, basically.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. I mean, none of us have firsthand experience with Japan, right? Yeah. Because from the outside, it kind of looks like the opposite today. Like when Fukushima happened, at least the image that came to us through the media was one that everybody in Japan is selfless and cares about the community. And there were these pensioners who deliberately went into the reactor because they knew they didn't have enough years left to live in order for the radiation to actually kill them. Like there was this one pensioner who was quoted as, "The radiation will kill me in 10 years if I go in, but I will only live 5 anyway." Something like that, right? So there's this image that everybody in Japan is completely selfless and community-minded and all of these things. And there's like even a Japanese term for being mindful of your environment and not being a nuisance, which unfortunately I've forgotten, but like there's this image. And this is kind of in stark like in that context, if that is even half true, my question would be, how would this message be perceived? Like, is this like one, like those two don't go together, right? So one of those two has to be at least partially wrong. So I would be really interested.
So what's the reality in Japan then?
Yeah, that's my question, right? Because I don't know. I went there once on holiday many years ago. But yeah, I have no idea. But within the confines of the movie, the reason I don't think it works is that the government is actually not shown to be ineffective. They show up twice, once with the battleship and once with the tanks. And obviously it's ineffective because you can't kill Godzilla with guns. But that is, in that context, it's a completely reasonable tactic. Right? When a giant monster shows up and starts wrecking the city, you bring out your biggest gun and you try to shoot it. And then when it doesn't work, what do you do then? That's the question. But we don't actually see them, they just disappear. Right? We don't see a single politician making announcements after that, I don't think. And we just immediately pivot to civilians coming together, working together to find a solution.
No, but wasn't it people of power? Wasn't it people of power that asked I don't know if I think it was a mixture of, I don't know if it was a mixture of people in the army or just regular guys, but they didn't ask them if they want to continue with this war, please stay, but if you want to go, pretty much they gave them, it was like of their free will, you can leave if you want to or you can stay, pretty much.
That was the grassroots campaign. That was not the government. Those were just scientists and business people and ex-soldiers coming together and saying the government is not going to fix this, so we have to. And at that point, they said, we are not going to force you. And if you don't want to do this, if you have families to worry about, we won't judge you for leaving. And then like 3 people left or something. But that was part of the better way. That was not the government.
And again, does that like kind of like tie into the kind of the topic or the theme of the kamikaze pilot still, in terms of, again, I'm not sort of too perversed into how much risk that the pilots had, but then that's again sort of like showing the opposite to it in terms of giving people the option, like, you don't have to, if you don't want to, if you sort of have your families, if you have responsibilities that you feel, you need to go back to, then you have.
I mean, there's that scene where Dr. Noda basically just gives a list of all the ways in which life is cheap in Imperial Japan, right? The unarmored tanks, the poor supply lines, the kamikaze program, and I think there was one more. And they left out banzai charges, which they could have mentioned too, which are like suicide attacks, where you just charge machine guns and hope to survive, or hope enough people survive. That was a tactic used by Japan in World War II as well. And it all fits this pattern of like the average person doesn't matter, right? Which, by the way, I thought was the second weakest line in the movie. The weakest line was Noriko's line at the end about his war being over. The second weakest line was where Dr. Noda just lists all the different ways in which the government sucks, right? You could have written that scene without actually adding very much time, where people just mention all the ways in which they experienced the war, right? Like one person said, I lost half my squad to famine, or another person says, mentions the poorly equipped tanks, right? That could have been much better, and they just listed all the ways in which they just listed all the bad government policies, which I thought was pretty weak. You could have made the same point much better as well. So we don't actually see the government fail, right? They just try twice, and what they're trying is totally reasonable, and then they disappear. And I think that is pretty weak. Like if they had, for instance, if they had just ordered people to charge Godzilla like with rifles over and over, and people keep dying because of that, that would have made the point a lot stronger, right? That they haven't gotten better. This is not a new era, right? Something like that.
But maybe that was a symbolism to kind of like showed like a reflection of what the government's like in like times of danger, times of fear, times of when people need help, that the government are nowhere to be seen.
Maybe, but then you can't at the same time say that the response is bad, right? The whole thing is not about the government isn't doing anything. It's about we have a better way now, and we have to, in order to solve this crisis, we have to be better than we were in the past, and that includes not doing things like kamikaze attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that didn't work at all.
Yeah, I feel like you're saying that they could have probably driven the point home a little bit more in terms of, kind of showing the government repeatedly making the same mistakes, and then the civilians showing that there was a different way to approach it. I think
there's lots of different ways to do it, but I think if your point is that the government is ineffective and useless, then you have to show them be ineffective and useless.
Yeah.
Right. And they didn't do this.
Wasn't that shown with the Navy? Wasn't that shown with the Navy?
Yeah. So there was this one battleship that tried to kill Godzilla, and Godzilla sank it with like a tailspike or something. But so and then when in the attack on Ginza, there are tanks who fire at Godzilla and get immediately destroyed. But so they try twice, and then they disappear completely and are no longer in the movie.
Yeah, I get your point.
So there's more. And then the actual plan that they come up with to kill Godzilla, I didn't read. First of all, there's still the establishment, right? Because they're military scientists and they're like factory owners. This is not like farmers and workers coming together to solve the problem, right? It's still the establishment. It's just not members of the government. And there wasn't anything about the plan to me that suggested the government could not have done this. Like you could have easily imagined a scene where the government puts all the scientists in a room and say, "We can't kill Godzilla with guns. We need to kill it with science. Give us a plan." And then from there on, the plot could have been exactly the same. If you're trying to make the point that the old ways don't work, we have to come up with something new, then I think you have to like show that somehow. And I think that also was missing. And then the final point is that what saves the end, what saves the day at the end? Kamikaze attack.
Yeah.
Right? The old ways save the day.
But with the extra twist of having the ejector seat so that he could still live.
But that's not essential to the plan working.
It's
that's
not
nice for him. No. That's a nice to have for him as the pilot.
Yeah.
But also, do you know where the ejector seat comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Nazi Germany. Like that was a German design. There's like German writing and like a swastika on the ejector seat.
Yeah.
So which means this was built during the Imperial era, during the war, and it just ended too quickly for this plane to be deployed. So this is one more way in which this is not the new way. So it's not like, okay, it's been 3-4. I think it's 4 years at the end. I think it's in 1949, and there's been enough time to design a new plane. And this new plane with new engineers under the American influence or whatever has ejector seats.
Yeah.
So this plane comes from the Imperial era. This is still the old way.
I get what you're saying. I think for the main character itself, it's a good way to kind of like, make his story come full circle. But I think for the movie, what you're saying, in terms of like some of the broader sort of themes and broader messages behind the movie, I think it's very contradicting. I agree with you.
Yeah, and it doesn't even work on a thematic level, because in the end, he still does his duty. He still sacrifices himself for the community. Except this time, there's a point to it, right? Whereas there was no point to the kamikaze attacks. Like they would not have had he done his mission. It's not like that would not have won the war for Japan, right? So the difference between the two is that in one case it was pointless, and here it has a point, but it's still a kamikaze attack.
But I think the point of that was just to fall into the theme of his character being able to escape from death.
Okay, but I think the theme then has to be kind of has to play out in the plot.
I think there's like a contradiction between the main character's theme and the main character's kind of arc throughout the movie, as well as like some of the broader messages being told behind the movie. And I feel like we have to kind of forgive it a little bit because it's a movie, and because they kind of have to sort of wrap up the main character story in a satisfying way. I can kind of forgive it, but I completely understand what you're saying.
But it's not a small detail, right? This is the whole point of the movie. This is the culmination of everything that has happened, and the movie is laser focused on these themes, and then kind of hand waves it towards the end, and that really annoyed me because it's not actually a resolution to his character arc in that sense. Like it is kind of for him in the sense that he finds a purpose and he makes that sacrifice in a way that isn't that he wants to, as opposed to being forced to by society, right? He's not just a disposable resource as he was in the war. Now he's actually doing something worthwhile that will actually help people. So on that level, I think it works. It's just on the level of the old ways were flawed, and we have better ways now, or we have to find better ways in order to overcome this crisis. That doesn't happen in the movie, in my opinion.
I hear you.
I hear you. Yeah.
And it really stands in contrast to how excellent everything else is. Like his internal character arc about the trauma and the PTSD and the survivor skill, that is all wonderful. But that's what kind of meant earlier that it feels like it's two different movies, or it was written by two different people, which I'm not saying it was, but it feels like it. Because those two things don't really line up, in my opinion. And that really drags down the movie for me, because it's not just a small detail, it's the entire point of the story. And if that doesn't work, and if they couldn't make that work, then that kind of drags down the entire movie for me.
That's still your favorite movie of the year?
Well, the competition is still creating.
I was going to say, yeah.
But there had to be a story though, because we get Godzilla, the defeat of Godzilla. That's like the main plot. But
and he had to be a hero.
Besides that, though, to form.
He had to have his heroic moment, and I feel like it just had to follow certain tropes to complete the story, where he needed to be the hero, where he needed to set the sacrifice. Have that little moment at the end of the movie where you're like, oh my god, did he did he actually sacrifice himself or whatever? It turns out he didn't. I feel like because it's a movie and because it has to have those things to keep the crowd happy, I forgive it. I can forgive it. But again, I understand how it contradicts his stories, some of the broader stories, some of the broader themes in the movie.
And it's also tricky because Godzilla is indestructible until he's defeated, right? Like there is no logical way in which you can defeat Godzilla, so you have to end the story somehow. But they gave Godzilla that power level and those kinds of traits, right? So I can't really think of a better way to end the movie because he's kind of set up to be undefeatable.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the writer's problem, not the audience's.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, guys. Well, yeah, that was a good chat. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else, but if not, I need some movie recommendations for this week. So please, if there's anything that you've watched worth mentioning, please say now or forever hold your peace.
I have not watched much recently, actually. I've been very busy with the house moving stuff, so I've been up and down. So TV series recommendation, I've watched the first part of the Invincible season 2, and that kind of continued being quite strong from the first season. So I recommend that. Given it's a good watch. But you, what about you, Dan?
I recently found White Gold on Netflix, which is a kind of a comedy about window salesmen in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like this misanthropic comedy where it's basically about awful people doing awful things to other awful people. But normally I don't really like those stories, but once you are 2-3 episodes in, it really starts having a lot of heart, and you start caring about the characters, and they're just likable enough to not be obnoxious. But within that framework, there's a story with beginning, middle, and end. There's 2 seasons of it. And I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Okay, since one
also go watch The Clone Tyrone on Netflix. I know that came out back in July, but I don't know how many people watched it. Fantastic movie. Give it a watch.
I've actually watched. I didn't finish it.
You didn't? Oh God, you not finishing movies.
Oh, I don't know, man. There was a lot going on, man. There was a lot going on in that film, but that's a topic.
I recommend to watch the movie. Love it. So
cool. But wait, speaking of movies, Aquaman 2. What's the actual title of the film?
Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom.
Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom. Expectation, guys. What are we thinking? Love it? You think you're gonna love it? You think it's gonna be a flop? What are we thinking?
So I think Aquaman is the best thing to come out of the DCEU, by a wide margin. I like Momoa's version a lot. I think James Wan is a very skilled filmmaker. The first one made me care about a lobster person with 20 seconds of screen time. So it's, I enjoyed that one a lot, and I think nobody expected that one to make $1 billion. And I think for the second one, I think they had an opportunity here to tell a story, because they're part of a dead franchise, right? So there's no sequel bait, there's no setup for anything, they don't have to tease anything, they can just make a movie.
Question: did they know that when they were making the movie, though? Just because this was come out a while back. I'm sure it was like scheduled to come out last year, and they kept delaying it, kept pushing it. So the movie's been made for a while.
Yeah, but so I don't know the schedule of that, but Warner Brothers would have told them what to do in that if that was a factor, right? And they just didn't have anything to give them, probably. Yeah. Either that, or there's pointless setup. If we actually watch the movie, there's pointless setup to a movie that doesn't get made. Maybe, I don't know. But often these movies are dragged down by having to set up the next 3 movies, and this one is in the unique position of not having to do that. And so my hopes were kind of that there was an actual story to tell, but the trailer is not making any efforts to show that. And I think the review embargo ends 5 minutes before the premiere or something like that, and they're not having a premiere at all. They just start showing it. So Warner Brothers is having no confidence in them whatsoever. And nobody has indicated anything about that there's anything good about it. So either we're going to get this hidden gem that nobody watches because they don't expect anything from it, or it's 2 hours of CGI trash, and we'll find out next week which of the 2 it is.
That's a great way to end the show. Sorry, how are you
I'd
gonna
say
say?
my expectations for this are extremely low. Like, there's not been much good come out of the DCEU. I'm glad it's over. I'm looking forward to what James Gunn does next year. But for this movie, like, I know you love the first one, Daniel. I was not a fan at all. I thought it was just cookie cutter, sort of, same old superhero movie. Nothing sort of special about it. Nothing remarkable about it. The character's cool enough. Jason Momoa does a good Aquaman. But there's nothing, and with everything that you said there about the review embargo and stuff like that, there was nothing pointing towards this being a good movie whatsoever.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I just would have found it really funny and satisfying if they try to make a cinematic universe for 10 years and the one good thing that comes out is a two-parter about the fish guy. like traditionally, Aquaman is a kind of a joke. Nobody takes him seriously. And if he was the best part, that would be very satisfying to me. But yeah, like you say, there's currently no indication that is actually going to happen. But I think people are judging it before they've seen it, and they're already dancing on the grave while the movie is still in the ICU.
Yeah.
Right, so he's not actually dead yet, but people are already celebrating his demise.
Yeah.
Right, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Like, there's been a lot of that recently where people want movies to fail, and I'm always up for a good movie, but it has to be good. Like, I'm not going to prejudge it either way in either direction before I see it.
I don't think we can really blame the people for this one because the trailer isn't giving us much, to be fair. I saw the trailer and it was just boring, honestly. It wasn't.
Yeah, but most trailers are
there is a lot of like tribalism and people hating on the DC movies and stuff like that. So
I'm not denouncing that, but in terms of trailer, that for me, trailers is what is actually a big factor when it comes to if I'm gonna go and see a film. Well, not personally for me. So I can't agree with most trailers being boring. But already with my opinions on Aquaman, I wasn't really a big fan. I think it's got to do with obviously his character is just not really too interesting for me. The film wasn't bad at all, the first one, but it wasn't memorable. So with this, the second one, I don't really have high hopes, but at the same time, I'm not looking to go there just to shit on the film by my language. I'm just whatever I get is what I get. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just hope kind of moving forward, and now that we're, I think there's only like one Marvel movie coming out next year, which is Deadpool 3, and then of course you haven't got the DCU starting until 2025. I just hope that they start focusing on making good stories. Like, it's like a sort of cinematic experience. We love the CGI, we love things blowing up, but first and foremost, what you need is a good story. And I hope they move away from just making movies for the sake of making movies and actually have a good story to tell.
Yeah, I rewatched Captain America: Civil War a few weeks ago, and I realized I really miss superheroes. Like the last few years have just not been all that amazing, and it's about like the characters stopped being interesting. This is the big thing. Like in those movies, we cared about Captain America, we cared about Iron Man, we cared about Winter Soldier even. And current, like it's all gotten so generic and so homogenous that it's hard to care about anything. And that's when people just, like with the Marvels, I haven't even seen anybody argue it's a bad movie. People just didn't go. That's like
because people don't care.
That is different from a movie being so awful that nobody wants to see it, right? There was just like complete lack of interest.
I think universally it wasn't liked, that film, unfortunately. I've read a couple of articles and you can see quite a few movie reviews that film wasn't liked.
Yeah, but even the reviews didn't really go into whether it's a good movie or not. They were more interested in talking about the decline of the MCU, at least the ones I saw.
No, I get what you're saying.
And we're getting a similar thing with Aquaman, where people are more interested in watching the DCU burn as opposed to asking, is this one any good?
All right, guys. Well, it's been nice talking to you guys today, man. Hopefully you'll feel good after today's first episode of Eye of the Storm. Hey, man. We'll be back again for Aquaman. Hope you guys enjoyed for wherever you're watching. But yeah, au revoir. That's goodbye in French.
Ciao.
Bye bye.